When I think of an esports PC, I think of an older 4-core CPU with a good pairing graphics card put together on the cheap, which is great for your wallet but leaves you high and dry with no warranty if something went really bad, and I mean really bad. But what happens if there was a newly built alternative with a warranty which is totally upgradable and even looks like a beastie gaming PC? Ladies and gentlemen, I bring to you the G6 ES2 Esports gaming PC. Equipped with the latest AMD Ryzen 5 2400G, which has built-in Vega 11 graphics, 8GB of DDR4 crucial 2400 MHz of RAM on an Acer Prime A320M-K motherboard, 1TB Toshiba 7200 RPM hard disk drive, and a 400W Aerocool Integrator 80 Plus bronze certified power supply. All this inside the Colleague Observatory case with 4 RGB fans, which, may I add, are probably the nicest fans and nicest case I have ever seen to date. Ample room for airflow between the case and the glass panels, a PSU shroud with lots of cable management room for cable ties, etc. And the fans have great lighting effects, smooth color grading, silent and great performance with very little color bleed. Unfortunately, I couldn't game on it straight out of the box, as I ran into the same problem J2 Sense did in his video in the video card roundabout now. Unfortunately, the update for the Ryzen APU that J2 Sense had posted at that time had been superseded by a newer version, which Ginger6 managed to find before I did, and boom, the machine was ready to rock and roll. So happy days. Due to the 8GB memory, which is perfectly fine for playing games on, and the system definitely proved that. However, because of the integrated graphics needing a portion of the RAM to run, and obviously the system needing quite a lot of the rest, I couldn't manage to get OBS to run during gameplay to record the gameplay. However, trusty old Bandicam worked perfectly. But I would suggest having either 16GB of RAM memory if you wanted to use this PC to play and stream on, or use an external capture device. With the tiny problems out the way, what if you just wanted to play the PC competitively without recording or streaming as you play? Well, that wouldn't be a problem. To say I was surprised at the results would be an understatement. Integrated graphics have come such a long way in the past few years, but Vega has leapt ahead of Intel's HD graphics series. Some games were getting well over 60 frames per second at 1080p without breaking that much of a sweat. So let us see how this actually performs. Starting off in Cinebench as stock speeds, we hit a respectable 789 points for the CPU test, 38.54 frames per second for the OpenGL test, which isn't too bad, still better than the PS4 and Xbox One, I guess. I do think the little 4-core 8-thread powerhouse still has a lot to offer though, especially being paired with a B350 or a B450 motherboard and being able to overclock it. But that is an option that when making your purchases you are able to fully customize this entire PC. So looking at this PC as a whole over on user benchmarks, this PC did impress me again, scoring 26% for gaming, 56% for desktop and 40% for a workstation. As you can see, it's only the boot drive and integrated graphics which cost this system points, but when using it the system is very snappy and the graphics power certainly is there. So would definitely love to look into this system in more depth in the future, or something like it for definite. So let's see what this little powerhouse can do. For recording purposes I did have to knock down to 720p to be able to record, but all of the settings did stay the same. I just changed the resolution from 1080p down to 720p. So starting off with CSGO 720p high settings, as you can see we hit just over 30 frames per second. However, this particular map is pretty demanding with the level of detail, but during playing at 1080p on high we were seeing just over 60 frames per second. Moving on to Rocket League, a bit better results here as we saw figures in the 40s on 720p high settings whilst recording, and just over 70 frames per second on 1080p without recording, which is fantastic. So now moving on to test the three most talked about and most played games of today: PUBG, Realm Royale and Fortnite. Well, PUBG won't surprise you here, but it was completely unplayable whilst recording, hitting around 20 frames per second, but when playing at 720p on high settings, hitting a whopping 103 frames per second and 60 plus frames per second at 1080p. This game is coming on leaps and bounds since we last tested it with how well optimized it's becoming. So moving on to the newest game of the three, and personally my favourite, Realm Royale, we saw almost 40 frames per second on 720p high settings whilst recording, and as much as 76 frames per second on 1080p high settings without recording. I just wish that I managed to record the results, but the screen looked too flickery and it would have looked absolutely terrible. But there is other people out there that have managed to do so, should you need that as a reference. But the star of the show and the most popular game on the planet, Fortnite. This did perform a little worse than I expected, only hitting 41 frames per second on 720p medium settings when recording, and 64 frames per second on 1080p, the same settings obviously, without recording. It was still playable, but thought being the most popular game on the planet, it would be a little bit more optimized to play on the really low end hardware, but this may be something Epic Games is working on to be introduced into the near future. So with that said, is it worth it? Looking at the PC parts picker, Ginger 6 looked to barely making a profit on each unit, so definitely. I personally can't see you getting a smarter and more future-proof PC package, which includes a case that can support almost any GPU and air cooler for your money, and obviously them RGB fans, they are just the icing on the cake. So if you'd like to go ahead and buy this PC, the link can be found in the description below. And I would like to thank Ginger 6 Computers for sending this great machine over to me to take a look at. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up, give it a thumbs down if you didn't, and why not subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. And I'll catch you all in the next one. Bye.